This is the Good Government Show.
Everybody in any elected role, whether it's a governor, whether it's a county executive, commissioner, or mayor, that we all share the similar experiences of we feel like at times we just don't have enough power to do things that we know our communities or constituents really want us to do. You know, it's hard work to be in public service, and not just in elected office, in however you define public service, but we always need good people in government. And if you can have good people, however you define the good people aspect, you're going to have a good government. I always say local government especially probably affects your daily life more than any other form of government. And people don't often think that. A lot of the attention is focused on the federal government because the news covers that the most. A little bit on state government, but the local governments are where we deal with your water, where we deal with your streets and roads that you use every single day. You know, the public safety, the police and fire and EMS, I mean, those are the things that really, really can make or break your life.
When I met the mayor of Troy, Michigan, he joked that everything was fine, good government all around. So I had to ask more questions. And you know what? Troy is doing well. Welcome to the Good Government Show. I'm Dave Martin. First, help us share the message of good government by liking us and sharing us where we are on Facebook, X, YouTube, Instagram, and Blue Sky. Please share our show with your friends and review us where you're listening. And check out our Good Government Show community. Check out our website for the link. Good government in Troy. It all starts with the mayor, Ethan Baker. Okay, he'll tell you it all starts with the city workers. And as you'll hear, he says that people that work for Troy work hard and do indeed work to make sure the community is doing well. He says as mayor, he's worked to make sure the people of the city know what the city's role is in government. And that means what they can do and what they can't do. I met Mayor Baker at the Conference of Mayors annual conference, and now he's on the advisory board for the mayor, so he's getting a view of government across the nation. He's also looking beyond the U.S. He's currently the chairman of the Great Lakes Fisheries Commission. The commission is a joint U.S.-Canada organization that collaborates on management of the $6 billion fishing industry there. Troy is a Detroit suburb, and we talked about the city's relationship with Detroit, including the Lions. We recorded this much earlier this year. The Lions didn't make it to the Super Bowl last year, but they're still in the playoff picture this year. Speaking of sports, as part of a new 5-year parks plan, Troy just built 8 new pickleball courts. The city's also opening up a new dedicated cricket field this year, the first in the Midwest. Mayor Baker says they have a large foreign-born population, and he says that provides an excellent way to bring new residents into American government. So coming up, my conversation with Troy, Michigan Mayor Ethan Baker. The Good Government Show is sponsored by Our. That's O-U-R for our community. Get involved. We hear that all the time from government leaders. Our co-brands with your government's name and logo. Your staff and the people you serve are connected and part of your community. From any device, your members provide reliable data and meaningful feedback. Ask a question like, do we want more parkland or better homeless services? More engaged conversations come through the Our app. Visit Ourco, that's OURCO.com, and book a demonstration. It was called the War to End All Wars, but it didn't. 3 royal cousins, all kings, one from England, one from Germany, and one from Russia, blundered their way into a war, a completely avoidable war that left millions dead in the trenches across Europe. Good Government Show executive producer Jim Ludlow details the blunders, mistakes, and bluster that started World War I that didn't end all wars. The book, The Royal Cousins, details the events and creates an alternative history. Imagine if World War I never happened. It didn't have to. Just read it yourself. Download the book today on Amazon. It's just 99 cents and a timely look at history. Welcome to the Good Government Show. I have with me Ethan Baker, who is the mayor of Troy, Michigan. Welcome to the show.
Hey, Dave. Glad to be here. Good opportunity.
Glad to have you. Now, I understand that everything's fine in Troy. There's no problem. Everything's great. You've solved all the problems. Congratulations.
That's how we did it. We did good government, and we made it perfect in every way.
Perfect. Everything's perfect.
We're very fortunate to have a really well-run city on a number of levels, from city staff all the way throughout the elected officials. And we've got great residents and business owners that really keep things on a good place.
So when you stepped into the office, there was no problems?
No, of course, I'll take full credit for everything that's happened since then. No,
full credit.
We're not without problems. We are a city of 90,000 people, so you can imagine there's always issues that come up. But we have worked really hard to actually stabilize city government, to make it more transparent, more just reliably open and honest, so people have some faith in government. And we know at the local level that's probably easier said than done in a number of ways because we're facing things every day. We're facing our residents everywhere we go.
Do people have faith in government?
I think they do in the city of Troy, probably more so than they do with the state of Michigan or certainly the federal government.
Okay.
And I would like to take some credit for some of that because I've worked really hard to always be a positive factor for the city of Troy and to share with people what they need to know about the city and also do a lot of education campaigns. We've focused a lot on educating our residents and business owners of what the purpose of local government is, what we can and can't do, and things that are going on. So when something does come before them, they feel like they know the facts, they have some trust and faith in us, and they know that we're not trying to mislead them in any way.
So educating the population sounds like good government. How did you do it? What did you do?
I think a lot of it goes to really just being out there, out in the community, meeting with lots of different groups of people who represent all kinds of different interests and factions. We are about 29% foreign born in the city of Troy.
Okay.
At this point, which brings an opportunity for us to often teach, the American form of government to a population of people who have very different experiences back in their home country. So that's been a big challenge, but also an opportunity for us to spread our good work and our education program throughout the city.
One of the things you said when you educated people was things that we could do and things we could not do. Yeah. How do you explain things you cannot do?
That's always a little bit of a challenge, but really, sure. We're a home rule city in the state of Michigan, which gives us some flexibility, but a lot of things come from Lansing, our state capital, and we really just don't have a say on how to do certain things. Certainly state statute will trump us on any issues that don't give us specific powers under the home rule law. So we spend a lot of time trying to say, look, we understand that you'd like us to limit fireworks, for example, to certain time frames or certain days throughout the year, but we can't because state law says we have to allow this much or these days. So that's just an example, but it's a challenge to try to explain to people why we don't have the power. They see me as the mayor. They think I can make it happen if they need it, but
just do this.
Yeah, right. I mean, and it's you hear different. I've heard a couple times even recently about everybody in any elected role, whether it's a governor, whether it's a county executive commissioner or mayor, that we all share the similar experiences of we feel like at times we just don't have enough power to do things that we know our communities or constituents would really want us to do.
Troy is part of the
Metro Detroit.
Metro Detroit?
Yeah.
Okay, so we all know that Detroit fell in very, very hard times. A lot of industry pulled out. I think that at one point they said that Detroit was actually prairie again because there were so many people had left the inner city. How much of that affected Troy, and how do you deal with having, the sort of economic driver for the region as a next door neighbor, more or less, not going in the right direction? And how do you manage that in your city?
Well, that's a really good question. First, I should say Detroit actually had a major resurgence and is doing much, much better than it was 15 years ago, even 10 years ago.
Yep.
And there's a lot of good reasons that happened. And part of Troy's success early on, frankly, was due to the demise of Detroit. People leaving the city of Detroit, they came up.
We're not Detroit.
Well, in a certain sense, that was part of it, right? People, as the interstate system expanded, people moved up out of the city and into the suburbs and really had a fresh start on a lot of things. And that made a big difference. And so I think that for years, there was a big competition between our suburbs like Troy and the city of Detroit. And, we thought, well, if it was good for Detroit, then it was going to be bad for Troy and vice versa. Today, it's a very different picture. We know that as a region, we all will do better, frankly, if we're all doing better. And Detroit is actually getting the attention and respect it needs and deserves. And it's helped us as we see more and more people focus on the good parts of Detroit. You see a lot of national coverage on it. There's a lot more conferences. There's a lot more people coming to the city, which then, of course, filters out into our local economy. Our southern border of Troy is only 6 miles north of the northern border of Detroit.
Okay.
Although often it feels like a world apart. There's a lot of bleed over. So if you have hundreds of thousands of people coming into the city of Detroit and really experiencing wonderful things down there, a lot of them are going to come up and stay in our hotels, use our restaurants. We've got world-class shopping in Troy. So it's been a good thing. So as the mayor of Troy, I really want to see Detroit do really, really well. And I think when it does, so do we.
We are talking in January at the Conference of Mayors in Washington. There's a playoff game coming up. How are you feeling about the Lions?
Go Lions. We know. We're very excited. I mean, it's a big, big deal for Metro Detroit, obviously,
because it's only Lions. A couple of years ago, they were not the best team of the NFL.
Oh, it was very recent. Yes. Very, very recent. And we've got In fact, tonight's the game. Obviously, this isn't going to air tonight, but we've got the Lions playing the Washington Commanders, and it's going to be wild. I was at the Lions game, their last home game a couple weeks ago with my son, and it was just a madhouse at Ford Field in a wonderful way. Really, really fun to see everybody come together and just have a good time for the Lions.
And I know this is a Detroit issue, but they've got that downtown complex of Ford Field next to the Tiger Stadium, next to the hockey and basketball arena. That's created a real,
it's a sports and entertainment district that really rivals anyone in the country, I think, as far as really quality and a good experience. And you can feel it when you're down there for any of those events. You love the energy on the streets. My son and I parked about a 15-minute walk from the stadium when we were there, and it was freezing cold, but we were walking back among, thousands and thousands of people who had kind of overtaken the streets.
Blue and silver everywhere.
But it was really true. No, but it really was just the energy was good. And you didn't have that in Detroit just not that long ago. I mean, there was a time fairly recently that you didn't go in there. You didn't go into the city if it was dark. And you certainly didn't, people talk about, we wouldn't even stop at stoplights in our cars because we were afraid of carjackings and bad things happening. I mean, it's a very different Detroit than it used to be, which is great.
And how has that helped Troy?
Again, it keeps us growing. It makes us more attractive. And, some people prefer to live in suburbs, obviously. And they like to go into downtown Detroit. If you've got a great suburb like the city of Troy and a great city like Detroit doing well, again, people are going to take advantage of both opportunities.
Is the auto industry based in any part in Troy?
We have a lot of auto-related industries still here, but we don't have any of the big three or any of the major. We have a lot of suppliers, obviously, and our economy is really diversified over the years. So we're not so heavily focused on the auto industry anymore. We have a lot of healthcare, a lot of hospitality and retail and just educational type things, a big mix. But we certainly do feel the effects of the auto industry doing well or not doing so well in the city of Troy, just based on the number of businesses that we have that are related. You
said you started in city council. What got you involved?
Good old neighborhood issues. I started first on my HOA, got to really like people. I mean, and you learn things as you go along, and it just kind of felt like a good fit when I started getting involved in the city business. I worked really hard. I had young kids at the time. I was concerned about the kind of city they were going to grow up in, and I wanted to make sure it stayed, moving forward in the right direction and gave them the opportunities that a lot of people had in generations before. And so I kind of just worked toward that goal, and I've worked really hard to do it. And I think my kids are having a good life in the city, and a lot of other Troy residents are too.
You said you were not born in Michigan.
No.
What brought you to Michigan? What brought you to Troy?
Troy. So my wife is from Michigan. Her parents actually are in Michigan now. And when we started having kids, we did not want to raise them in Southern California, where we were living at the time. I grew up in Northern California.
Okay. And
then moved to LA to go to school. But we had our first baby, and we thought, this is okay. But as soon as we had our second one, we said, let's go back to Michigan and raise kids in really a wonderful place. And my wife's family was there, so that made sense.
They do have slightly better weather in Southern California.
You say that they do, but they don't. I don't know. There's something beautiful about seasons, and there's something beautiful about the Midwest. Change, positive change. We joke about it, and everybody, if you live in LA, there's some, it's either super, super hot or mild for the most part. Sometimes it's cold and rainy, but you don't really get to enjoy the weather when you work. When you're an adult with responsibilities and you spend 40 plus hours a week in an air conditioned office, it doesn't really matter what it's like outside.
And the cherries are better in Michigan?
Absolutely.
Right.
Absolutely.
And do you go to the Upper Peninsula?
Not often up to the UP. It's pretty far. I mean, people don't realize how big of a geographic area Michigan is, but certainly we go up to Mackinac, which is right, in the Mackinac Straits in between, and spend some time up there. And of course, Traverse City, you're talking about cherries. It's a beautiful part of our state. And it's actually really had a resurgence in many ways because of COVID. People learned a lot about upper Michigan up north and Traverse City. And so they're experiencing an extreme amount of development and growth, probably more so than the locals really want, but it's a beautiful place.
Do you have an issue in your city of growth and the right growth? And by that, I mean development that people want?
Absolutely. And I think, one of the downsides of having a good government or having a good city is that people want to be there.
Right.
And when you kind of max out on space or you develop pretty much all that's there, we're landlocked. It's not like we're expanding out into prairies and everything that it's there. I mean, we've got cities around us. There's a huge focus on that infill development and what's good for the community, what's good for the residents. And you've got competing interests. You've got people, younger families especially, or not even families, but single people who would love to live in Troy for all that it has to offer. but can't afford to pay for a traditional colonial type home or single family residential. So they prefer more multifamily or even townhomes. But then you have the people who've lived there for years and have these, beautiful tree-lined neighborhoods and single family homes who don't really want apartment buildings or townhomes being built, nearby where they've always had, for example, some woods or parkland or on a corner that's already busy with traffic. So we face a lot of development type tension on those issues.
And how do you deal with that? You're the mayor. How do you run that?
You listen to everybody, but a lot of that is education, right? And you can change zoning laws and you can do things, but none of that moves fast. People are learning that you can't change that stuff too quickly.
More than anyone,
right? But also, the interesting thing is that people have a hard time understanding why there's change in property suddenly, and people don't realize that some families hold on to land for decades and then decide to sell it, and a proactive developer will come in, and if it's zoned for multifamily development or for something different than what's there now, people have a hard time with that. But we've got private property rights in our country, in our city, of course, and that's a big part of our education component. And sometimes, we've got some different development tools that do both protect woodlands and trees, especially, but also incentivize developers to do things that will help us out as a city. And some of that, we call it cluster development, for example. But sometimes we spend a lot of time educating our community. It might be better to have a little bit more density here to save a certain amount of trees and treescape than letting them clear cut everything and just build single family homes.
That's a hard thing to sell, though, isn't it?
It's an extremely difficult thing to sell. But if you can show truly what it's going to look like with a competing plan, often that really does the trick. But again, getting that information out to the right amount of people and the right people can be a challenge.
And I would imagine when you do that, you feel pretty good about what you did that week.
When it's a success and people who were pretty upset or complaining about a development project see it the other way and understand why this is actually better for them, that's a huge good feeling, a huge success. And of course, the alternative of that can be frustrating. There's people, you can't make everybody happy in any role in government, which is a challenge also. But we do our best to try to make sure people understand that we're doing it for the right reasons.
What is your biggest challenge in delivering good government in Troy?
I think it's similar to what everybody else faces, right? Rising costs and everything from, our healthcare in the city of Troy is going up 9% this next year, which has a real budgetary impact.
Sure.
Public safety is always our number one priority, as I think any local government should focus on. But, delivering those services at a time when it's harder to recruit people into those types of jobs, police and fire, that's always a challenge. So you find you've got some great police officers and great firefighters, but they're being stretched thinner than they probably should. So those are the challenges.
Are you hiring police officers?
We're always hiring police officers. I mean, I think anybody pretty much is that, in a position like us, because we face retirements, and we've had a big crop of retirements over the past 10 years. And I think that's probably just generational. You had a lot of people coming out of the military after Vietnam and that time period. A lot of people got into public safety. There's never been a backfill of that same kind of mindset since.
You said you were a lawyer. Did all this prepare you to be an expert on housing and staffing and trees?
Not specifically on the issues, but being a lawyer, we research a lot as lawyers, or good lawyers do. So that definitely helped me try to find the answers and research. And I remember campaigning back in 2014, 2015 for this role. And I would explain, I'm a lawyer and my job as a lawyer is to analyze people's problems and find a solution. And, it's a similar thing in government. So I always thought it was kind of a good crossover.
Okay, coming up, we're going to get your real philosophy of government. So think about that.
Uh-oh.
Once you wrap up this episode of The Good Government Show, give a listen to our friends over at Good News for Lefties. This daily podcast highlights news stories that show there's more good news out there. Other people in government are really trying to do the right thing. That's Good News for Lefties. Listen where you're listening now. After you get done with this episode, hear more good government stories with our friends at How to Really Run a City. Former mayors Kasim Reed of Atlanta and Michael Nutter of Philadelphia, and their co-host, journalist and author Larry Platt, talk with guests and other mayors about how to really get stuff done in cities around the nation. Check them out where you're listening now or through their nonprofit news site, thephiladelphiacitizen.org/podcasts. Here we go. This is the Good Government Show questionnaire. The hardest question is the first question. How do you define good government?
I think good government is a government that works for the people it represents And I do believe there's got to be a lot of transparency in government, and people get into trouble when you are not transparent. And also, good government is full of people that are really there to serve not just themselves. And that's harder to find these days. But, we really need to focus on why we're doing and why we're trying to.
So you're not here for the glory? Is that what you're saying?
Well, don't get me wrong. I love the glory like anybody else does, but it's good glory. But it's hard work to be in public service, and not just in elected office, in however you define public service. But we always need good people in government. And if you can have good people, however you define the good people aspect, you're going to have a good government.
Okay. Do you have good people working with you?
We have wonderful people in the city of Troy. And I think
because in Troy, you've solved every problem.
We've solved every problem. I think the strength of our success, though, is the fact that we've got great city staff. We've had a long history of city staff and department heads who really give their all for our community. And that makes a big, big difference.
I know that you've solved every problem and everything's going wonderfully, but how do you decide week to week if you're doing a good job?
That's a good question. You've done this before.
I have. That's why I get the big money. I'm in it for the glory.
Yeah, I know you are. Yeah. So that's funny. Sometimes when you've done a good job, and sometimes you feel things are a little bit off. And some of that's just feedback from community members. If I tend to think I'm doing a fairly good job if I'm not actually getting interrupted at the grocery store as much, or hearing complaints about things. So some of it's just measuring statistics on how many emails I'm getting and how much,
So if you walk through the Little League
and everyone's
game,
just happy and smiling,
hello.
I mean, that's a key component of it.
Are you out in the community? Are you
I'm
everywhere?
out in the community a ton.
Yeah. You said you had kids.
We have 3 kids, and we're out. I spend a lot of time in Troy and supporting Troy businesses, so I see a lot of people on a daily basis.
Do you work in Troy, or do you work in the
Troy?
City? Yeah.
Oh, yeah. My office is in Troy too. So, yeah. I mean, I think that's a big part of it. I get a lot of feedback. Some of the social media, of course, you tend to see the worst of things or how people are viewing things in social media. So that can be tough sometimes. But even that, there's good nuggets out there.
If people don't like what you're doing, if they don't think you're providing good government, how should they hold you accountable? What should they do to you?
Well, I think ultimately, elections are the
Right.
truest measure of that. I'm all about open communication. I would love to hear what you're unhappy with in our city, and we can talk about it and work through it. And often, I joke about our city being perfect, but people make mistakes. Humans make mistakes, right? And sometimes, a resident can provide a perspective, or a business can provide a perspective that helps us do our job better. They share that information with us. My guarantee is always to follow up on it and to look through it and find, how we can do things better when there is something brought to my attention like that.
The people, if they don't like what your government is doing and the direction you're taking as mayor, what should they do?
Well, I think you see it time and time again with grassroots organization, right? People will rise up. They will form their own groups. They will come to us at public comment, obviously. You start to see things happen online or in community gathering places. And I think that is what the people should do anywhere. If you're unhappy with the direction of what your leaders are taking, the best thing you can do is organize to try to educate them on what they're doing wrong. And if it doesn't work, you keep going strong. And you'll see that at the federal government. You'll see it wherever it is. Okay.
You've been a city councilman. You've been mayor for how many terms now?
I'm in my 2nd term, so it's my 6th year as mayor.
6th year. What would you like people to know about government that you now know from the inside?
I think, honestly, government workers take a lot of flack. You hear about, there's a perception that they take advantage of the system or they don't work very hard. And I'm telling you, I see government employees who really give their all and aren't just working government type hours. They take that work home with them in their mind and their stresses, and they're always trying to make sure the community is doing well. And it's important to respect our city employees. And also, I think the other thing is, I always say local government especially probably affects your daily life more than any other form of government. And people don't often think that. A lot of the attention is focused on the federal government because the news covers that the most, a little bit on state government, but the local governments are where we deal with your water, where we deal with your streets and roads that you use every single day. The public safety, the police and fire and EMS. I mean, those are the things that really, really can make or break your life.
Sure.
And that's at the local government level. So pay attention to your local elections. A lot of people will vote in a federal election and won't even know there's a city election. Our city elections are on off years, so they get even less attention. It's really important to pay attention to the candidates that are running and ask a lot of questions. Be involved. Pay attention before something happens to you that you don't like. And that's the big thing.
That's one of the reasons why we put the show together, was to highlight the fact that there are people who do get up in the morning and they don't make the papers and they don't get all the glory that you get, but they work hard.
Extremely hard. And that's the best thing about our society and our forms of government, is that there are people who work day in and day out to make sure you have a better life.
So we should keep doing the show.
Keep doing it.
Okay, good. All right. So you make news in your town. Is there a local paper? Does the local Detroit papers cover you? What do you read? Where do you get your news from? And do you read about yourself?
I do. Yeah, we have a local paper. It's a weekly paper, so it's not a big circulation in the city of Troy. Our Detroit Free Press and Detroit News, they cover Troy a fair amount because we are a powerhouse in the region. So I'll show up in there sometimes. And then our local TV affiliates, which I can't remember off the top of my head how big the market is from a national standpoint, but our local channels cover Troy quite a bit, and we have some great journalists locally in Metro Detroit.
Do you have a good relationship with the local press?
I do.
Thank you.
I think that's important.
Good.
It's a mistake. You can complain about the press, but I think you get far better. You can go much farther if you have a relationship with them, because they're going to cover the bad that may happen, but you also want them to cover the good.
Sure. And there's no use being antagonistic with the local paper because they're there. They're not going away, right?
They'll win.
Yeah. So when you were growing up, did you envision running for office? Did you think of yourself as going into politics or going into government or running for anything? No,
not at all. I think, at one point I wanted to be a quarterback like Joe Montana, so that didn't happen.
Sorry.
I did some theater and some performance type stuff, but even that wasn't really that. I use that now more than people probably realize, but I didn't really get involved in, or didn't think I would be a candidate for anything.
Were you in the movie business when you were living in Southern California?
I did some acting.
Did you really?
Yeah, out in LA. That's one of the reasons I was down there.
Oh, all right.
I was not a successful actor, so
you had to fall back in law school.
I did.
Good for you.
It worked out okay, but it never really occurred to me. I always thought politicians were something different than they were, and I grew up in a poor household, a single mom, some issues and things, so it never really, I didn't seem like as a kid or as a young person that I was even growing up the way that I thought our politicians did.
Okay. Are you a politician?
Yeah, I guess. By the nature of it, I hate that word, but of course, it's silly to run away from it. And, the longer you do things, the less, you're not so much of a citizen politician anymore. You become part of the establishment, or as the problem, as people like to say, but there's something to be said about experience.
There's no problem.
Right? Yeah.
You keep saying there's no problems. Everything's fine.
Well, there's a lot of interesting perception out there about what people think of.
So I've been to Detroit. I have not been to Troy. I know one of the big culinary dish in the Detroit area is a coney.
Yep.
If I'm coming to Troy, what are we having? Where are we going? What's the dish where that's ultimate Troy?
Gosh, we've got so many restaurants in Troy. Truly, we're known for our restaurants, and everything from corporate steakhouses down to mom and pop, kind of hole in the wall restaurants. We have some really great Middle Eastern cuisine and like Southeast Asian Indian food that I couldn't pick just one. There's a few of them that really are good, and that's part of our foreign-born population. But come eat in Troy. You could spend a week and eat a different restaurant, different type of food, 3 meals a day, and still have plenty to choose from on your next trip.
Where do you go?
I try to. We go through phases. My wife and I, or my family and I. I love some of the. I love some of the Middle Eastern places that serve some really good bowls and shawarma and things like that. I like that. Other times, there's some diners. There's a place called Noni's Grill that's got great, huge portions for a reasonable price still that you can make 2 meals out of, and it's just good people, good family-run business.
So this is the Good Government Show, and we always try to bring it back to good government. Give me an example of a good government project you were able to put together.
I think we've done a really good job with some communications planning lately, and I think that goes to good government. Communications is so big. We hired a new communications director, then Troy didn't really have one for a number of years, or really never formalized that position. It was kind of always a hodgepodge of different people. But we knew the value of bringing somebody in that was really dedicated to communications and communication strategy and planning for the city. Because again, I go back to that education is so important. So while that's not a specific project about, development project or something, although I've got some of those too, just the fact that we've really focused on
I can certainly get behind having a communications director. I like that.
The communications director and community engagement focus that Courtney is her name has been really great. And we're already seeing the rewards of just people being more engaged, but in a healthy, positive way.
So maybe Courtney will listen to the show and tell everybody else to.
I'm hoping so.
Me too.
Yeah.
All right. Ethan Baker, the mayor of Troy, Michigan. Thank you very much. Pleasure chatting.
Thank you, Dave. Appreciate it.
In the city of Fate, Texas, they don't leave good government up to, well, fate. Join me for another show I host, As Fate Would Have It. My co-host is David Billings, the former mayor of Fate, who shares his opinions and thoughts on what good government is in Fate. As you'll hear, they don't leave it up to fate. So listen right here where you're listening now to As Fate Would Have It. See, I told you everything is just fine in Troy, but I do like his focus on local issues and talking to his citizens. That can only lead to good government, or at least keep government moving in the right direction. And he's right when he says we all need to pay attention to local elections. While the big national elections do get more press, it's the local elections that have a more direct effect on all of our lives every day, day in, day out. So it's good to hear that Mayor Ethan Baker is out and around and talking to people in Troy, Michigan, because that's good government. Well, that's our show. Thanks for listening. Please like us and share us with your friends and review us right here where you're listening. And check out our website, goodgovernmentshow.com, for extras. Help us keep telling stories of good government in action everywhere. Join us again for another episode right here. I'm Dave Martin, and this is The Good Government Show. The Good Government Show is a Valley Park production. Jim Ludlow, Dave Martin, that's me, and David Snyder are the executive producers. Our show is edited and produced by Jason Stershic. Please subscribe, then share us, and like us and review us. That's the best way to make sure we're able to keep telling these stories of our government working for all of us. Then listen to the next episode of The Good Government Show.
This podcast is part of the Democracy Group,